In today's Meet the Athlete episode, we are taking a look at the rising star that is Thomas Evans. He had an incredible amateur year last year, just recently competed in his first pro show, and we're excited to see him at World's Strongest Man. So Thomas has replaced the widest man in strongman currently, Pavlo Nekonechny. Unfortunately, Pavlo Nekonechny, he hasn't given a reason, but we think that it's just due to the injury he had at the Arnold's, has unfortunately had to pull out of this year's World's Strongest Man, which has given Thomas the opportunity to step in. He was the reserve, and he's now an official contender. And I'm excited to see him. After watching his performance at the Arnold's this year, I'm really looking forward to seeing Thomas compete at Worlds and seeing what he can do.
Yeah, I think after watching him at the Arnold's, a lot of people were saying, why wasn't he in the original lineup of 30 athletes? And it's really bittersweet because I wanted to see Thomas compete here, but I never want it to be at someone else's expense. So we will miss his wideness at this year's World's Strongest Man. It would have been his first Worlds, but he's very young still, and hopefully we can get him back healthy at the competition in 2024. But yes, let's first take a look at some facts and stats about Thomas Evans. So 2022 was really Tom's breakthrough year, and it started strong when he won the Amateur Arnold Strongman World Championships, which qualified him for the 2023 Arnold Strongman Classic. In August last year, he competed in and won the Shaw Classic Open, which has earned him an invitation to this year's Shaw Classic. And at the 2022 official Strongman Games, he went in as one of the favourites to win, but he ended up placing 8th in the final, which I know was quite a blow after having such a dominant year leading up to that competition. But then of course this year he competed in his first high-level pro show, the Arnold Strongman Classic, and he placed 5th, beating seasoned athletes like Luke Stoltman, Kevin Ferris, Rob Kearney, Tom Stoltman and Pavlo Nekonechny.
Yeah, other than that blip, and let's not call it a blip, you know, as a pro athlete, you're going to have ups and downs.
Of course.
And for the most part, Thomas has absolutely smashed almost every show that he's done.
But last year he earned himself an invitation to the Arnold Strongman Classic, which could lead to a Rogue invitation, you don't know, the Shaw Classic, and now of course he's ended up at World's Strongest Man too. So what a year for him and a rising star. So we'll have a look though at these events, because obviously every single competition is different, to see how we think he could do in the heats at this year's World's Strongest Man.
So obviously finding data about Thomas against the absolute best has been difficult.
Yeah.
Not a huge amount of information to go off. You have found out a little bit about what he's done in the past. Obviously, we've been able to see some of the more recent performances for ourselves. And the exciting thing for me with this guy is he just seems to improve very quickly. This is one thing I will say, and he may struggle at Worlds for this particular reason. He seems very good when he's got a good amount of time to prep for a competition.
Yeah.
Now, when you become pro and you get these last minute invites, you don't always have that luxury. So he'll have been kind of totally focused on the Arnold's, and then without that invite to World's Strongest Man, like most of the athletes would have had months ago, he would have been looking at the Shaw Classic next as his next major show. So a little bit of a switch. Over a short period of time, he's going to try and prep for this show. It'll be interesting to see how he copes with that. But we'll have a look and see what he's got in terms of in the past and see how we think he can do this year.
Now the group stages are starting with the loading race, and like you said, that we don't have much on Thomas, and what we do have, it tends to be at the sort of amateur open level, so it's not really comparable to what he's going to have to do and who he's going to be up against at World's Strongest Man. But he did, it was like a loading medley of sorts, if you like. It was a heavy sack into a wheelbarrow at the Amateur Arnold's, and he placed 3rd. But it's impossible to say how that's going to translate.
I think that's pretty good, because loading tends to be one of those events that isn't that different between amateur and pro. You see some amateur guys that are absolutely brilliant in terms of these type of events. The weights that are used in competitions aren't that different as well. It'll be more coping with the experience and the pressure. Obviously the Arnold's is pressure, but this is a different kind of pressure. It's a slower competition, lots more camera stuff to do, lots more pressure in that respect. But I think, you know, it's an event I can see him doing pretty well in. And then obviously deadlift this year, he did okay at the Arnold Strongman Classic, pulled 388 kilos, just shy of 390.
That was a personal best for him.
Yeah, that was a PB. So he's kind of improving in this event now. Anything under 400 these days is ridiculously considered not elite, which is crazy to think that. But he's not far off it. And I think, we've spoken about other athletes that we think will still pick up points.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's potentially going to, I can't see him winning a deadlift in his group.
No.
But depending on who's in there, maybe a third place, maybe a fourth place. If he's unlucky with a really tough group, it could slip down. So it's going to come down to grouping, but it's not a terrible event for him. It's just not an event that you can guarantee points with as well.
Talking to him at the Arnold's, I know he was worried about the deadlift and said it was one of his weakest events, but one event that isn't weak for him is the log lift. This is an event that he won for reps at the Shore Open. I think it was 154 kilos that they were lifting, and he did it for 7 reps, which is good for any pro competition. And of course, he lifted the 195 kilo Austrian oak at the Arnold's.
Yeah, he's clearly elite level when it comes to pressing overhead. Obviously, there's a lot of elite lifters at the Arnold's. There's going to be less at World's Strongest Man. And again, there'll be less in your group. So I think he can get some big points on this one. So Conan Circle is the next event, and there's not a huge amount of data. You found something where he was carrying a stone for distance at a competition, but it was only a short distance, about 21 meters, that he ended up taking that stone. I think he's going to need to carry the Conans a little bit further than that. He's quite a big athlete as well. So tends to not suit athletes that are built in this manner, but we just have nothing to go off. One thing I do kind of credit a lot to Thomas every time I've seen him, he's a gutsy performer.
He is.
I'm not going to sit here and say he's beating a Pavlo Kordiaka. I don't think there's any hope of that happening, but it'll come down to who's in there, how much determination he's got, how he copes with the pressure of being at World's Strongest Man.
An interesting event will be the kettlebell throw, because I couldn't find anything about him throwing except for what did they ended up calling it? The Steintossen.
Yes.
The Steintossen. He was second there. He's
very good.
He's a really dynamic and powerful person, isn't he? So I think as long as he's nailed the technique, I think he'll be really good at it.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, I don't necessarily think he wins this event.
No.
But I can see him picking up points for sure.
Now, the Atlas stones are going to be very interesting, because what little information we have about the stones, and of course, he's only going to do these if he finds himself in 2nd or 3rd place in the group. So he came 8th at the stones at OSG and 5th at the Shore Open, lifting just 3 of the stones there. So it doesn't feel like it's one of his best events.
No, and at World's Strongest Man, stones are such an important event. So he needs to make sure they're a little bit better than, say, some of the previous performances. But I'm excited to see what Thomas can do. He's an exciting prospect in terms of looking at the future.
Definitely.
I love seeing these new guys coming through into the sport, and he has had such an amazing year. Who knows what he could do? There is a chance that he makes the final. When you look at his Arnold performance, you'd say guaranteed he's going to make the final, because he did so well at the Arnolds. But he had a year to prepare for that show. You think about in terms of that, you had that qualifying from the amateur Arnolds to going a whole year knowing that you're preparing for one show. It's a little bit different to having a short prep like you'll have at Worlds this year, and again, 2 very different types of comps. But from what I've seen, he's unbelievable, an amazing guy behind the scenes, and I wish him the absolute best of luck at this year's World's Strongest Man.
I don't expect him to make the final this year. It would be incredible if he did.
He's a hard one to predict.
He's very hard.
Like I said, so many shows he just turns up and he puts in the performance. But I don't think we should be down on him if he doesn't make the final.
Absolutely
He's still
not.
such a newbie in terms of this level. And, he's one of those guys, I think it is hard to predict whether he makes the final or not. I can't see him winning a group. I think there'll be, at least a seed, if you like, in each group that probably is guaranteed to be better all round on some of those events.
Going to be a couple looking at the lineup.
But World's Strongest Man, injuries happen, people don't perform, people crumble under the pressure. There's a lot of factors, and I think he can do very well. So there is a chance, and if he gets to the final, we should look at those events. Yeah,
definitely. Well, we'll have a look now, but I hope he doesn't feel any sort of pressure to get to the final, because he's just had such a great year. And this is something you usually say. It's such a good experience, isn't it, when you first go to Worlds? And
absolutely.
You get to compete against all these top level guys, and he's going to learn a lot from it. So in the final, unsurprisingly, we haven't seen him do pretty much any of the events. The fingers.
You know what? Fingers, I think he can be pretty good at. Yeah. I think he's done a 109 kilo dumbbell in competition before.
OSG.
That's not going to be good enough to challenge some of the big dumbbell presses that we have. You know, we're looking at average dumbbell presses at around 120.
I know, which is crazy. Isn't
yeah, there's a lot of very good dumbbell presses. Stones, as we said, it's not necessarily the best event for him, and this is going to be a step up in level in terms of Atlas stones. I think truck pull, with his NFL background and his huge, like, he's a big dude, very powerful. As long as his technique's on point, I think he could be very good at the truck pull. So there's going to be events where he can pick up points.
Yeah,
I can't see him being a threat to the title just this year.
No, but he's definitely a very exciting prospect for the future.
So guys, that is Thomas Evans. If you haven't seen him, go and check him out. An amazing up-and-coming athlete. We've been super impressed, as you've heard in this video, and we are looking forward to seeing how he does at this year's World's Strongest Man. As always, guys, thank you for watching the channel. Comment below with your thoughts on Thomas, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll catch you guys next time. Stay strong.